It was bound to happen someday. For a while now, the nightmare teddy bears known as the Bilars have kept popping up in our videos, no doubt reminding each and every one of you to make sure your doors are locked. We offered to make a full video on Winnie the Pooh's sleep paralysis demons, and today we'll be making good on that offer. It's time for a dedicated deep dive into the Bilars, the group-minded creatures that, despite their unseemly appearances, were actually pretty chill. But don't let that dissuade you. Even Abeloth probably checked under her bed for these little guys every night on account of their appearance alone.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Right off the bat, the Bilars were actually even worse to look at than you'd think. All of the in-universe material we have depicting them is black and white, which allows perhaps the worst thing about these little guys to slip under the radar. They were totally hairless. Have you ever seen a picture of a naked mole rat? Think of that, but bear-shaped and with the stare of a serial killer. They were about a meter tall and were usually only ever regarded as either being the cutest creatures imaginable or Sith spawn levels of living horror with no middle ground. In case you couldn't guess, we take the latter stance. If Bilars were to spot you, they would come at you in one of three ways. Usually, Bilars walked in a bipedal stance, but they were also known to drop on all fours, and on their homeworld, they preferred to swing around on vines. Oh yeah, and did we mention that they always smiled like that? That's right guys, the Bilars were always wearing that creepy, I'm going to eat your firstborn grin. Fortunately, that's just an empty threat. The Bilars wouldn't actually eat firstborns because they were all herbivores. While that may bring you a bit of relief, don't get too comfortable because they had excellent night vision and were capable of seeing infrared, which means you probably couldn't hide from them too easily. Alright, that's enough fear-mongering for now. The Bilars may have been absolutely terrifying to look at, but in a practical sense, they weren't at all a threat. They weren't aggressive and mostly stuck to themselves, largely because other sentients had a hard time understanding them for reasons we'll get into later. The only thing to fear from them was recurring nightmares. The Bilars evolved on the planet Mima 2, located out in the galaxy's western reaches, which was as close to the middle of nowhere as you could get without entering wild space or the unknown regions. The planet was relatively young and had a lot of tectonic activity thanks to strong tidal influences. As a result, its land masses were constantly changing and they featured a whole lot of mountain ranges and volcanoes. Despite its geological turmoil though, Mima 2 was fairly hospitable and mostly covered by dense jungles of blue, yellow, and rarely green plant life. It featured a fair share of animal species as well, including a creature even more terrifying than the Bilars, the Riam, a species of carnivorous flying snake that could eat a Bilar whole. Honestly, between the scare bears and the flying snakes, you'd be better off visiting Korriban than this place. We'll take ghosts of the ancient Sith any day. From the beginning, the Bilars were shy, non-violent creatures known to run and ask questions later whenever they felt they were in danger. With that said, they were also intensely curious, and when they didn't think there were predators nearby, they became almost fearless because of it. Despite the flying snakes, life was relatively easy for the Bilars, as the jungles of Mima 2 had an abundance of easily available food for them to chow down on. This led the Bilars to become rather laid back as a species, focused less on survival and more on entertaining themselves. By far, the most unique attribute of the Bilars was what they called the Clacka. You see, on their own, Bilars weren't all that smart. Individual Bilars had the intelligence of a common rodent. However, when Bilars grouped together, they formed a Clacka, or a group mind, which increased the intelligence of all involved. A Clacka of 2 Bilars had the collective intelligence of a domesticated animal, while Clackas of 4 or more Bilars were outright sentient. Clackers of 7 or more Bilars had genius-level group intellects. How this happened was poorly understood, but it was believed to be linked to pheromones. It was believed that Bilars evolved this trait as a way of keeping themselves safe from predators. The dangerous nature of Mima 2 meant that the Bilars depended on the safety of numbers, causing them to become highly social. Over time, it's believed that this social nature led to the development of the Clacka, but that wasn't known for sure. What is known is that Clackers formed between Bilars shortly after they were born. Groups of Bilar females would essentially synchronize their reproductive cycles so they could all give birth at the same time, allowing their offspring to instantly form a new Clacka with other Bilar young. Bilars essentially saw their Clackers as individuals, with each member of the group having no identity whatsoever outside of it. When an individual Bilar died or was separated from a Clacka, the rest of the group would not only lose intelligence, but fall into a deep depression. Some Bilar Clackers that lost members would go catatonic, and a rare few pulled a Padme and died of sadness on the spot upon losing a member. Because of these close bonds, Bilars had difficulty understanding other sentients, and other sentients had difficulty understanding them. In particular, Clackers would often experience mood swings or sudden behavioral changes due to their nature as groups, which would often baffle sentients that weren't familiar with the Bilars beforehand. Not even scientists had a good grasp of how Bilar Clackers work. Despite the unusual nature of their group consciousness and the lack of a need for technology, the Bilars did develop a civilization on their homeworld. Larger Bilar Clackers even built cities in one of Mima 2's rare, stable regions where they lived in peace and comfort. Their society wasn't all that advanced, however, even by our standards. By the time of the Galactic Empire, the Bilars hadn't even entered the atomic age, despite the high intelligence of some of their larger Clackers. This was because they really didn't need advanced technology. What they had was enough, and they desired no more. Mima 2 and the Bilars were discovered by the Republic somewhere around 2,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, but the Republic pretty much ignored them, and the Bilars ignored the Republic in turn. The Bilars had nothing to offer galactic civilization, and most Bilar Clackers wanted nothing to do with the wider galaxy either. They didn't even bother asking off-worlders for space travel technology like nearly all other sentient species would have in their situation. Nonetheless, there were Bilar Clackers that made it out into the galaxy at large. Some outsiders nicknamed them the Tictils, which was a corruption of the acronym TCTL, meaning too cute to live. Again, we don't have the faintest clue how anybody could find Bilars cute, but each to their own. Bilar Clackers who ended up away from their homeworld often ended up getting homesick rather quickly. The galaxy was a cold, hard place, as Zuckuss once said, and it was full of all sorts of horrors that, to the Bilars, not even flying snakes and their brethren's grins could compare to. Galactic civilization was full of war, hardship, and unfriendly faces, things the Bilars didn't really have back home and weren't eager to get mixed up with. This was all made worse by the fact that a lot of beings were intensely speciesist toward the Bilars, who were widely distrusted because of their poorly understood group minds. There were, however, Bilars that had some success in the galaxy at large. Bilar Clackers were often recruited by traveling circuses who put them to work as acrobat troops because of their extreme coordination. Other Clackers ended up delving into the galactic underworld and using their group minds to become skilled slicers, assassins, and even crime lords. One particular Clacka, which called itself Uni Yurudi, was a genius-level group composed of 10 members. Yurudi became a highly successful con artist and the richest being in the Anowat sector. The Clacka even came to own several clubs in Bespin's Cloud City. So, that's our look at the Bilars, the creepy nightmare teddy bears that were actually rather tame, all things considered. But what do you think? Are there any other species you'd like to see us do a video on? Let us know all that and more in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.